Alright, so you guys might not realize this, but this is the first time that I've ever worked on a Vacheron Constantin. So I'm pretty excited. So let's see if this movement is as beautiful as everybody talks about. What the f? This is some bullshit. Alright, let's rewind. Okay, so this is my uncle's vintage Vacheron Constantin. He bought it new in the 1970s. Solid 18 karat gold. And he sent it to me because it wasn't holding a wand. Apparently, he sent it to a quote-unquote watchmaker to service this heirloom. Instead of fixing the mechanical movement, they ripped it out and glued in a $5 quartz. They literally threw away the heart of a $10,000 watch. Well, today we're going to undo that crime. I've sourced a period-correct mechanical movement, and we're going to rebuild this piece of family history. So sit back and enjoy. Alright, well you're all caught up, so now let's get to work. So it looks like they took the old movement out, and there's a spacer that they put in here for the quartz movement. Cheap plastic spacer. But you can see there's 18 karat solid gold Vacheron Constantin. This is a model 39014P. And you'll notice the movement is loose here. So it's not actually, there's no dial feet or dial dots or anything that was used to keep the movement stable. Alright, so let's get the hands off of here. I'm putting some protective plastic so that I can protect the dial while I take the hands off with this remover. Okay, just like that. Hands come right off. Let's put the hands here in this little plastic container so I can send them back to my uncle. These hands won't work on the movement. These are just plastic gold colored hands. So that won't work. But we do need to get the crown off of here. This is the solid gold crown that was kept on there. And I will tell you that it fell off previously, so it wasn't even held on there very good. So we'll take care of that. So here's the movement that I was able to source. It is a Vacheron Constantin caliber 1003. This particular movement was designed in the 1950s, actually introduced in 1955, and it was in use in many dress watches from the late 50s through the 70s, and actually later returned in modern form as the caliber 1003/3. But there's a few issues here. The center wheel, cannon pinion, and hour wheel are too short for this dial. This is a thick, solid gold dial here. Compared to the dial that was on it, which was very thin, and it doesn't have any dial feet. And this movement doesn't really use dial feet the same way as you would expect. So we got to figure that out. And this is an ultra thin movement. As a matter of fact, it was the thinnest hand wound movement in serial production when it debuted. So as you can imagine, very tight tolerances. So not a lot of room to play. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the balance wheel cock. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's a very delicate hairspring that is attached to the balance wheel, which can get very easily damaged. So I just want to get it out, put it away safely so it doesn't get damaged. And then I'm going to release the tension from the mainspring. The mainspring has tension in it right now, and if I were to start just taking parts apart, things would go to flying. It would not be pretty. So we need to release the tension there. I'm going to take off the click spring here. And then I'm going to remove... oh, there you go. There's a spring that actually does it. Ooh. Let it go. There it went. Look at that. Didn't go too far, thank goodness. But things do fly, so we got to be careful. So the configuration of this, the barrel, the mainspring barrel, which is underneath this ratchet wheel, is interesting. It's basically floating. It's only held in by those 3 screws. by the top. It doesn't have anything to rest on underneath. So again, they were working with very tight tolerances, trying to make this movement as thin as possible. So it adds some interesting challenges as we move forward here. And by the way, those screws are tiny. These are the small screws I've seen in a while. I will say that the finishing on this movement is really beautiful. There's all kinds of decoration that's done by hand. Those beveled edges are all hand polished. Those circular patterns are called perlage, circular graining. And then those lines that you see on the bridge that I'm removing right now are called Côte de Genève or Geneva stripes. All beautifully done. And this is part of what makes Vacheron Constantin famous. I mean, look at the perlage on the bottom, underneath of that bridge. It's pretty nice. Okay, so I'm removing here the third wheel and then the fourth wheel. Can't remove the center wheel yet because it's attached to the cannon pinion on the other side of the watch. And then we're going to remove here the escape wheel cock. And actually what's interesting is that the escape wheel is jeweled with the cap jewel as well. Usually that's a sign of a fancier watch. So that's interesting. All right, so there's the escape wheel. I'm going to turn the movement over so that I can remove the cannon pinion. And I'm going to use a cannon pinion remover here. To safely remove the cannon pinion, you have to remove it straight up or else you could easily bend it. And you notice that the center wheel fell down out of the bottom once I removed it. That's what was holding it in place. Now, if you've never watched somebody service a watch like this, I'm going to take it down all the way to the bare plate. There won't be any parts left in here. Every screw, every single spring, every part of it will be removed. We're going to take it apart. We're going to clean it. And we're going to fully oil it properly and put it all back together. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show. There's that mainspring barrel that I was talking about. See how it was just floating there? And it's only attached by those 3 screws. So it's definitely a different design. Obviously, they're working to try to minimize the thickness of the movement, but it's definitely interesting. So if you can do me a huge favor, if you could hit the like and subscribe button and maybe add a little comment down below, it'd be huge for me. Makes a big difference. Lets YouTube know that you're enjoying my content and pushes it out for more folks. So I would really appreciate it. Thank you. So let's keep going here. This is the what's called the keyless works. These are all the parts that interact with the crown when you turn the crown, and what actually makes you have the ability to either wind the watch or set the time. So take all this apart. You can see there's a lot of old grease in here. And again, you know, I sourced this movement, it was used movement. You kind of don't know what you're going to get. You're hoping there's not too many gremlins in here. Bought it as working. It was not working very well, but that's okay. I expected that. So let's keep going here and see what we find. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to peg all of these jewels. So this is the first part of pre-cleaning. And I'm using this wooden peg here to clean all of the jewels in the movement. And that kind of breaks up the old oils that are in there. And then I'm going to be doing some cleaning of the movement itself. But this is actually some naphtha, which is more commonly known as lighter fluid. But actually it works really well as a cleaner for watch movements. So I'm just putting it in here and doing some initial cleaning. And this is actually before I put it into my watch cleaning machine, because it actually helps me remove some of that old grease and makes the watchmaking machine work better. And then I'm putting all the parts here into the baskets for the watch cleaning machine. And I'm keeping them all in the same sections together so that it's easier for me to know how to put them all back together. Now, this is a pretty simple movement. There's not a lot of complications or different components to it, so not too difficult, but it's always better to just keep the family of parts together, especially the screws, that they're slightly different. This just makes it easier to keep track of everything. So while the parts take a bath, a quick note on this cleaner. This is the Uberkiwi. So it's a Kickstarter project that I backed and I built myself and 3D printed all the parts. It's a great little machine. Now, I can't share the files for this. Obviously, it's a Kickstarter, but For tools and mods that I have designed, like my parts holders and other things, those files are available to supporters on Patreon. It's also where I post behind the scene updates. Massive thank you to the new paying members who make these restorations possible. Dave, Christian, Brett, John, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, let's get back to the watch. Now, this is the inside of the barrel, and I'm actually removing, it's called the barrel arbor, which in this case is interesting because it's screwed together. It's a little different than what I'm used to, but this is all part of that piece that screws from the top that holds the barrel in place. And here we have a new mainspring. So I'm just putting it over the barrel and I'm popping it in place. So now we find another small issue that we need to deal with, and that is the fact that there is way too much side shake in this barrel, the barrel bridge. If you notice, it's moving way too much, and actually that causes the barrel to tilt and causes additional friction. So we need to address that. We're going to use my staking set to do that, and what I will do is I will use 2 punches, rounded over punches, to basically flatten the hole a little bit to make it smaller, and it reduces the size of the hole. And my goal here is to make it a little too tight, and then I will use some smoothing broaches. See, that's too tight, it won't even actually fit fully on there or spin at all. So now I'll use a smoothing broach to very lightly skim the inside of the hole a little bit, just to reopen that hole back up, and that'll help me get it just right. And then I'll make sure to clean it up and remove any of the burrs that it might have with a countersink right here, and that'll clean it up really nicely. Okay, let's just do the other side here. All right, let's take a look. Okay, yeah, that looks a lot better. Fits over nicely. Let's see if it'll spin easily. Yep. There we go. Perfect. All right, let's move on. So we have a similar situation. Because I had to get a new center wheel, because the other one was too short, if you recall, this one is a little loose as well in the center hole. So you'll notice that it's got a little bit of a play. And you can see it shaking back and forth there. So we will need to address that as well. Same way, I'm going to reduce the size of this hole using the staking set, just like I did with the barrel bridge. And then we'll clean it up. I'm spinning the movement just to make sure that it's even all the way around. Very, very light taps. Okay, and now it's a little too tight, so that's perfect. That's what we want. And then I'll smooth the opening a little bit here, and then we'll make it fit perfect. Let's take a look. There we go. Let's see if it spins freely. Yep, it does. Looks good. I'm going to just clean again the burrs on the edge there, make sure that it's nice and smooth, and then make sure it's polished. Make sure to get any metal pieces that may be left. I want to clean that up. Okay. Looks good. All right, let's get this sucker back together. So we're going to start with the barrel. And this is a setting lever screw that actually screws into the setting lever on the other side of the watch. And that's the screw that you will use to release the crown when you need to take it out, the winding stem. So now I'll use my automatic oiler here to put some HP 1300, which is medium viscosity oil, on the center wheel. And actually, before I do that, I need to put the other wheels in place first, because they sit on top of each other. So first the escape wheel, then the fourth wheel, put that in its jewel, and then we'll put in the third wheel, and then finally the center wheel. And try not to throw it around. There you go. All right, and then like I said, the center wheel, and then we'll put the train bridge on, and we need to be very careful here. We need to make sure that all of those tiny pivots are inside the jewels. Now those jewels are actually rubies. They're synthetic rubies. They're made specifically for watches, and they took the place of what they used to use brass bushings for. And the reason they did that is because the steel pivots are stronger than brass, and it would wear down the brass significantly. So they started using jewels in place of the bushings. Now, rubies are a 9 on the Mohs scale of hardness. The only thing harder than the ruby is a diamond. So they're harder than steel, so they won't wear out. So it's a lot better of a bushing than brass. And when you see a watch that says it's a 17 jewel watch or a 21 jewel watch, well, those are the jewels they're talking about. And normally, the nicer the watch, the more jewels it has. To a point, I've seen jewels or watches that say that it has 30 jewels in it, and some of those jewels aren't even in pivots. They don't do anything, so that's more marketing than anything else. But 17, 21, 23, that 25, that's a nice jeweled movement. So here I am, I'm putting on the ratchet wheel. Notice those tiny little screws that are holding up the barrel, and that's what pulls up the barrel onto the ratchet wheel. That's the only thing holding in that barrel, those 3 screws. And I was just turning the ratchet wheel there to make sure that the wheels are all turning okay. All right, so let's get the click spring in here, and this is the spring that presses up against the click, which keeps the barrel from unwinding. Okay, so now we're putting on the escape wheel cock there, screwing that down. All right, and we're just checking to make sure that we've got good movement of all the wheels. They look to be doing fine. All right, I took the ratchet wheel back off because I realized I didn't put a little bit of HP 1300 here underneath the ratchet wheel to just give it a slight little bit of lubrication to help it along. So let's put that back in. Right, we're just going to hold it in place with this brass tool just to tighten them up. And then I'm going to put a little bit of HP 1300 here around the crown wheel. Now this crown wheel is made up of 2 parts. Vacheron calls this the crown wheel. And then there's a part that goes inside of it, which Vacheron calls the crown wheel core. And just a tiny bit of HP 1300 there to add the lubrication that it needs. Line that up with the holes and then put the screws in. There we go. Now that crown wheel is what turns when you turn the crown to wind the watch. And that's why it's called the crown wheel. Okay, and this is the click that we're putting on here. And this is what keeps the ratchet wheel from unwinding and letting all the power out of the mainspring. And it clicks, which is why it's called a click. And that's actually the sound you hear when you wind your watch, is that click going across the teeth of the ratchet wheel. I'm putting HP 1300 here, both in the center wheel jewel and in the parts around the click spring and the click. All right, and I'm just using some Rodico here to clean up any excess jewel. And I'm going to put some 9010, which is the thinnest oil that I have, on the jewels of the 3rd and 4th wheel. And we found another problem. There was a broken tooth on the clutch wheel. And that would work okay, except over time it first of all, you feel it clicking, like it skips when you're trying to set the time, and over time it would actually damage the intermediate wheel, so we don't want that. So we had to get a replacement. Now we're putting in the winding pinion and the clutch wheel. And I'm using 9504 grease. This blue grease is actually what I use with metal, on metal friction, sliding friction. Mainly used here in the keyless works. By the way, it's called the keyless works because watches back in the 1800s were wound up using a key. And what they did is when they came up with this mechanism, they called it the keyless works. Makes sense, right? You notice I use a little bit of Rodico, which is the Watchmaker silly putty, to hold down the setting lever while I screwed it in from the other side. But that Rodico is used to clean and to help, general purpose while you're working on parts. Kind of a valuable tool as a watchmaker. And then these are different points that I'm oiling, which is again where there's metal to metal friction with that same 9504 grease. This is the setting wheel. And this is called the additional setting wheel. Usually it's called the intermediate wheel, but Vacheron calls it an additional setting wheel. And before I put the minute wheel on, I'm actually going to move the movement over to a metal block and push down a cannon pinion. I'm trying to keep the stress on the jewel on the other side of the watch as little as possible when I put the cannon pinion on, and then here's the minute wheel. All right, and this is a yoke. This is what actually interacts with the clutch wheel to push it back and forth. And then this cool looking spring here is called the yoke spring. And I'm going to tighten that down. And that's what actually puts the pressure on the clutch wheel, on the yoke, to keep it against the winding pinion, excuse me. Screw it down. All right, perfect. There you go. Make sure that all the wheels turn properly for setting the hands. Now, I didn't put the pallet fork in with the rest of the parts because the jewels are held on by shellac. Shellac softens inside some of the chemicals, so I like to keep it separate and actually clean it with one dip, different solution, just to be safe. It's probably okay, but just to be safe. All right, this is the pallet cock on here. And I'm just making sure there's free movement before I tighten it down. Again, the pivots on this pallet cock are so small. They're finer than a hair. So you need to be careful. Tighten them down. And then I'm going to put some wind in the watch. And I need to make sure that the power to from the mainspring is coming all the way to the pallet cock. And sure enough, see it snap over? There you go. Now I'm going to lubricate the pallet jewels. And I'm going to use 9514 grease. I'm going to put a little touch of it on each of the end of the pallet jewel, and then run 3 teeth through. And I'm going to do that 5 times for a total of 15 teeth on the escape wheel. And then I'm going to run them all through a couple times, a couple cycles, to spread it across all of the teeth of the escape wheel. All right, I'm moving the pallet fork over, and then we're going to put in our balance wheel. All right, hopefully all this work that we did worked out and this sucker kicks up and we can get, look at that, started right back up. Awesome. So when I put this on a Timegrapher, my amplitude was kind of low. So I did some looking around and I found that the center wheel didn't have enough end shake. So it was compressed too tightly between the two jewels and it wasn't able to spin as freely as it should. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to use my jeweling tool, Hoya jeweling tool, to adjust the jewel. I'm going to bring it up slightly to reduce the pressure on the center wheel. And when I say slightly, I mean slightly. I'm going to move this jewel 1/100th of a millimeter. Because you can see how thin that bridge is. And that is 1/100th of a millimeter. There you go. That's it. Yeah, you can't tell. But there's a scale on it. But you can see how thin that bridge is. I mean, it's just the slightest of movement. But I'll put the bridge back on here and I'll check it, and you can see a little bit of movement inside the jewel. So I'm getting the freedom of movement that I want for that center wheel. All right, let's get this back on here. All right, and then we'll wind it up. Okay, it took a little bit for the balance wheel to kick back up, and that's usually an indicator of beat error. And I did notice when it was on the Timegrapher that the beat error was a little high. Unfortunately, this balance cock does not have an adjustment for the beat error, so we got to do it the old-fashioned way, which is not so fun. And that is take the balance cock off like this. I put it onto this tool here, and then I very gently reach in with my smallest screwdriver and then slightly turn the collet that much. And be very careful with the hairspring, you don't want to damage it. But I got it. As you can see, 0 seconds a day, 267 amplitude, and 0.5.6 milliseconds on the beat error, so that's good. 0, +3, -4 in crown left, and -3 in crown down. I'm happy with these numbers. But now we have another problem. The hour wheel was too tight and wouldn't fit over the cannon pinion. So let's fix that problem. Recall this is a new cannon pinion and a new center wheel and a new hour wheel. So I'm putting it into this tool here, which is used to hold down the wheel in place while I use this cutting broach. Put a little bit of HP 1300 oil on the cutting broach to smooth it, and then go through, and this will slightly enlarge the hole. And once I'm done with that, I'll use the smoothing broach to kind of polish the inside of it so that it spins very freely. All right, and then we will take this off and then try it out. There we go. Again, we're using our Watchmaker Silly Putty, and it's called Erotico, guys. And then we will test it out. And perfect. It's great. And we have another problem. The hour hand's too loose. So we got to fix that. So for this, I'm going to use my Sights jeweling tool, which actually has a tip for closing, specifically for closing hands. Has both for opening and closing hand holes. Put a little bit of oil on there. And then I'm going to use this to press down on the hole itself, and it will enlarge, or excuse me, it will reduce the size of the hole. You can see how I'm turning it. There you go. That's it. Now this was probably the third attempt at getting it right, but get the idea. And then there you go. Perfect. Fits good. Now I need to polish these hands because we have a problem. These are stainless steel hands. I'm using some diamantine powder polish to polish them up. Need to get them really nice because they're stainless steel and we need them to be gold. So we need to plate them. So let's plate them. So this is my plating setup here, and actually the piece that it's sitting on top of is actually a heating plate, and also it has that magnetic spinner in it. But when I turn the voltage up here with the anode, this is an electro cleaner. So that's the first thing we're going to do is run it through this electro cleaner to clean it and get rid of any residual oils. But we have to get this up to 180 degrees, which is why I use this plate. Okay, we're going to rinse it off as well, and then we're going to plate it with zinc first, because you can't go from stainless steel to gold. You have to go to zinc first. So we'll plate it with zinc, and then rinse it off, And that one requires 2.5 volts. And then here's our 18-karat gold bath. And then I would kind of sped this up a little bit so you can actually watch the hands turn gold. There you go. It took about 30-second drill time or so. But now we have some nice gold-plated hands. All right, so let's go over to the polishing machine. And I'm going to use some rouge here to polish the case up. And this is the first step, is I polish the whole case to get rid of the tarnish and all that. And then I'm going to change to this. This is for the brushing wheel, and this puts that brush pattern on the back. And then I will tape off that brush pattern and then come back and give it a slight polish on the edges just to clean it up and give it a nice transition. All right. And now we need to put the crystal back on the case. And for that, we need to glue it in. And this is some GS crystal glue, crystal cement. Put this all around, and then we're going to put the crystal back in. You can imagine this is a pretty unique shaped crystal, and it's not one that I can just purchase very easily. I mean, there's nothing that I can purchase easily, right? So I can't just call Vacheron and say, hey, I need these parts. First of all, they won't sell to me because I'm not them. And I have to be creative on what we have and what we can do. So I have to source parts however I can. And then this crystal, well, it had a couple of blemishes. It was fine. Now, wouldn't you know it, the fun didn't stop here. So I ordered a winding stem because the winding stem that came with this movement was too short for the case. Well, unfortunately, the winding stem didn't fit the crown. Our good friend, friendly watchmaker who put the quartz movement in, decided to kind of bore out the crown for the winding stem that came with the cheap quartz movement. So I had to make a new one because I can't purchase it. Luckily for me, I have lathes and I can do whatever I need with the lathe. So you can see here I'm turning it, and I'm actually turning it to the specs of the actual movement itself. And then this file here actually is doing the square that turns the clutch pinion. See? Now, I really sped this up, but if you are interested in this type of video, or look at some of these behind the scenes video, that a little longer video that has a little more detail as to how I do some of these things, join me over on Patreon. That's where I've got some of these longer behind the scenes videos. We're doing all kinds of interesting things over there. Also, you can help me decide what my next project will be. So please join us. It's free to join. You're welcome to come over, and your support is always appreciated. Here I'm putting the threads into the other side. And then this is the last piece when you're creating a winding stem, is the piece that's the slot for the setting lever. Do that last because otherwise it would be too much pressure on the stem itself as you're putting the threads in, and it'll break it. And then finally I'm polishing it all with some of this diamantine powder mixture that I have, and then get it all nice and ready to go and polished up. We've got ourselves a new winding stem. All right, let's move on. So we're going to put the cannon pinion back on here. This is again the new cannon pinion. Now you might notice that actually the wheels and the setting lever spring are nice and polished now. I took them off. I wasn't happy with how they looked. There was a little bit of corrosion and they just seemed to look better. So I took them off and I did a little polishing and cleaned them up a little bit. So got the hour wheel on here, and then we will put a washer that will keep pressure down on the wheel so it doesn't pop up. Okay, now I'm not crazy about this. I'm putting a dial dot, or a couple of dial dots on here to keep the dial from spinning. Now, in this particular case, it's designed to be held together by the case itself. There are no dial feet, and the movement doesn't actually even have a place for the dial feet. The dial never had dial feet, so really it was kind of my only option. And I didn't have to use them, but I just felt more comfortable with having a little bit something there to keep it from spinning around and moving. I'm just going to put the hands on here, and actually I'm going to use this brass pusher on my other jeweling tool. I know, I have too many tools. This is an old favorite jeweling tool, but it allows me to keep pressure underneath, on the jewel underneath on the other side of the dial. And I'm pushing that and then I can really dial in the depth that I wanted to there. Now I'm just going to resize the winding stem and we'll close this out. To be honest, this restoration fought me every single step of the way, between closing the worn holes in the main plate, finding replacement parts, resizing the hands, gold plating, and even fabricating a custom winding stem on the lathe. Nothing about this was drop-in. But that's exactly why it had to be done. My uncle bought this Vacheron new in the 70s. He wore it through the best years of his life before someone took the easy way out and ripped the heart out of it. He's down in Florida right now just waiting for a box to ship. He hasn't seen the process, he just trusts me to fix what the last guy broke. So when he puts this back on his wrist, it's not just a shiny gold case anymore, it's his watch again, with the real mechanical soul that was supposed to be there all along. Before we get to some before and after goodness, I want to thank you for staying all the way to the end. I really appreciate you watching. If you want to see another piece of history brought back from the brink, I think you'll love the restoration I linked to on the end screen. Please like, subscribe, and throw a comment down below and tell me what you thought, or if you want to share a story. I read and respond to all the comments, so don't be shy. And I'll see you next time here in the Watchmaker Studio.